talking about chapter 5 of Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own. The setting I think is set by chapter 3. We're at her home, and she's looking at her own library, I believe, her own books. And I think it should be said she has a room of her own. A lot of this is really interesting because she's talking about women in fiction, and she's probably the most prominent, certainly the most prominent female novelist. And looking back on it, probably the most prominent English language novelist of her time. It's arguable, but she was certainly. But she's not really talking about her own experience writing. And instead, in this chapter 5, she talks about another woman's novel. It is like a lot of what she does made up. There is no Mary Carmichael, who wrote a novel called Life's Adventure. She's probably sort of talking about a novel that she did read that's similar, but she's made up Mary Carmichael, and she's made up the idea of the novel Life's Adventure. And one can sort of guess why she didn't mention anybody by name, and it's because she says some critical things about this novel. She doesn't think it's particularly good. But it has some redeeming value. She sees some promise in it. I don't think she thinks it's a bad novel, but I don't think she thinks it's a very good novel. But it does show promise. Maybe not this particular novelist herself, so-called Mary Carmichael, but it promises something in the future. And it does have some redeeming value. The first thing she says about the writing style is just not very good. Uh, that's what she says here. Mary is tampering with the expected sequence. First, she broke the sentence. Now she has broken the sequence. Very well, she has every right to do both these things if she does them not for the sake of the breaking, but for the sake of creating. But she does say that she unhands herself. I'm not sure where that is. It's an old expression. She loses control. Like she doesn't think it's particularly well written, but then she reads this one sentence that Chloe liked Olivia, and then things really open up. That is, what she realizes is that the book, at least partially, is about the friendship between two women. And this comes to Woolf as a kind of revelation. And why? That's, I think, really important for this chapter. Why is that such a big deal that Chloe liked Olivia? But there's a book about two women and their friendship. As she explains, the way that men have written about women, and men have written about women through the years, that has not been a big part of it, or any part of it. That is, the book, at least partly, is about two women relating to each other, whereas the way that men have written about women dominantly is about how women relate to men, and that is a huge change, and it opens up a subject matter and a realm of experience that Woolf does think is revolutionary. That is, that women will begin to write more and more about their own experience and not feel hampered by the kind of image that men have of women. I think that she thinks that this is a very good sign. That this novel may not be a great novel, it'll be forgotten in a few years, but it's part of a history of women's writing that is heading in a better and better direction. And one of the things here, this is literary theory. She's got a certain idea of writing and what writing is for and what the best writing aspires to do, which is essentially to be profound. But that the worst thing I think she's saying that a woman can do is to try to write like a man. She should write like a woman. Now, that might be viewed as kind of essentialist, to use a big word. That is there a way that women write? Is there a way that men write? Is there a female writing? Is there a male writing? I think she's kind of saying yes. And that's why Jane Austen in the early 19th century was such a genius because, against all odds, she wrote like a woman. I mean, she wrote like herself, but I think Woolf would say she has a woman's prose style. She didn't ruin her writing by trying to write like a man or to follow the model that male novelists had. Um, well, that's pretty early on in the novel, 1815 or so. But the models that men had established, she wrote like a woman. And one of the things that she finds really promising in the fictional Mary Carmichael's novel is that she, at least at times, writes like a woman. And as she says, this will enrich. If women really bring their view of reality and their way of experiencing and being to the page, this will enrich literature. One of the things she says towards the end of the chapter is imagine that some explorer comes back and finds evidence that there's a third sex. Let's see if I can find it. I mean, it's an amazing idea. But her point is that that would be a great gift to the human species in general, because it would enrich our view of the world because that third sex would have a different way of being and a different way of seeing the world and a different way of thinking that would enrich human experience in general. So I think, I'm confident that's what she means. I don't know if she's right, that there's a sort of a gendered or sexed way of seeing the world, but that's, I think, I think it's one of her big points in this book.